they move out. Try to see when they're pushing you so that you're not surprised by it. And then you can prepare. But really good question there. Mods, was there another question in there? Who's got one?
Bulya asked, in the first game, stats stopped at 2-2 upgrades and didn't get any more. Was that because he knew he could finish the game, or is that normal with that push?
So just to reiterate that question, in case anyone didn't catch that, it's 2-2 upgrades. Why did stats stop there in game number 1 with the Colossi push? Why didn't he go for 3-3? Is it because he knew he could finish the game? Yeah, basically he wanted to commit to that. Now, I'm not going to say stats is sitting there in the game and he's like 100% chance I will win the game with this push. But what he's saying is I want to commit everything to warp-ins right now, things that will help this army immediately. I was talking about the power spike of you've got the splash damage, the 3 Colossi, and you've got the supporting units. And the more supporting units, the more Zealots and Archons, the more powerful that army, that moment is. And that is what he's leveraged throughout this entire series to beat Maru, right? Is he's hit that timing before, like I said, the Vikings or the range libs were out fast enough. That if we wanted to dumb this down and answer the question of what do you do as Maru to beat this style, it's get your Vikings, your range libs faster. Figure out this is happening and just get that out. Because often it's a very narrow margin of about 30 seconds, 40 seconds, where if stats hit that much later, there would be like an extra 4 or 6 Vikings out or an extra 4 Liberators out with range as opposed to no range. And that totally turns the maths upside down. So it's a conscious decision to say, I want to commit really hard to this right here, right now, this army. If I invest in 3-3 upgrades, that's 400 minerals, 450 gas, something like that. It's about 400, 500 minerals and gas each, and that doesn't help you until several minutes down the line. So it starts making a very pointed decision. I want to commit everything to right now. And as I said, if he gets pushed, if he didn't find that window, I was talking about how he'd add Storm. He might go for Fleet Beacon and that. He'd absolutely add 3-3 as well at that point. But this is the same reason you'll often see TY sit at 2-2 against a Protoss and not get any more upgrades. Last year, in a lot of his TVP, where he was the best TVP player in the world at the time, and it was incredible to watch. Because he was like, yeah, I could start 3-3, and then my Marines and Marauders are going to be a lot better against Storm and Colossi if they have 3-3, aren't they? It's like, no, it doesn't make that much difference. Whereas he'd eventually get them if a game went long enough, but he was much more focused on, I need my Ghosts, I need my Ranged Liberators, because these are the most important thing at this point in the game. So there's just a lot of prioritizing that goes on. And you don't need to look at that necessarily and say, I need to prioritize the same way to be as good as them, like, or to try to be a good player. It makes sense for their level of play, prioritizing everything. You're not going to be as tight, as pointed in your play, naturally. So it's totally okay for you to not even bother with things like that and be like, nah, I'm just gonna queue up the upgrades. Because I'm usually floating 800 minerals and 800 gas on 3 base anyway, so it doesn't make a difference for average Joe. But in your stats, yeah, that extra Archon, extra 5 Zealots you make, fuck yeah, that makes a difference. So it's always cool to look at these tiny little things where you're like, does that really matter? And the answer is yes, every tiny little thing adds up to make these players the gods that they are. Triple, thank you so much for the 9-month resub. We have an ugly, ugly baby. I appreciate it though. You carried it. You pushed it out. Thank you very much. Appreciate the support. Another question before we get into the nitty gritty of this game.
Lepsid actually had a question for last game about Maru. He asked, as Maru, since he was on 2 base, shouldn't he have a couple extra racks?
Okay,
because
great
of
question.
Being able to be on 2 base, apparently you're supposed to have 5 racks production. I'm not sure. I'm not a Terran.
Yeah.
I'm sure you would be able to.
I saw that question as well, actually. So great pickup there. That's a good one. He would have eventually gotten there, but he was trying to hit a sharp timing, so he was constantly building units, so he just didn't have the money. If he wanted to, basically, if that game went on, that previous Dreamcatcher game, Maru would have started floating minerals at some point, even whilst continually producing units, but it would have taken a while to build up, and then he would have had like 300-400 minerals extra, even after queuing up units and depots. And then he would have had the choice of either, do I go 3rd command center, or do I go 2 more barracks to round out my 2-base production? Because he doesn't miss a beat in his production, he never gets supply blocked, you'll see pro gamers often hit what we call a big 2-base push, or even sometimes a 2-base all-in, and they often do game-ending damage or pretty much break their opponent off just 3 barracks. And yeah, for a lot of new players, like, wait, what? Aren't you meant to have 5? They would get there eventually. They just don't get a chance to because they're so good at constantly spending their money on 3 barracks that they get over there and start the fights before then. But you will absolutely see an alive a Keen, one of these, especially in Alive, I'm thinking is probably the most aggressive 2-base focused Terran who likes to take his third very delayed. They'll often, you know, go up to the 5 barracks before going further with that, if that's their game plan. So good question. All right, so guys, it is 1-1 at this point in this series, and we've seen Stats this time deal with a very different scenario, and this is awesome because this is where we get the section of the video where we talk about how do you defend proxy barracks. And I tried to emulate the exact same reaction earlier, and it was a bit of it was comical because I don't normally play Stargate since a long time against Terran, and it was kind of hilarious. But basically, let's go back to this point. Probius comes in and says, all right, I've done a gateway scout, so it's not the fastest scout possible. So he doesn't have a lot of warning, but it's a small 2-player map, so that's okay. If it was a bigger map, I think he'd probably pylon scout or maybe end up with a slightly different response. But comes in and is like, hey, no barracks, and then confirms by checking, yep, there's 2 gases mining. As soon as you see the second gas, you know the barracks isn't just hidden in some random corner of the main base. Or, I mean, it could be, but it's probably proxied. And Stats had this probe here heading towards the natural to expand. He immediately says, nuh-uh. Drops a second gas, a second pylon, a cyber core the moment the gateway finishes. Keeps building probes, says, I'm okay, we're just going to probe up on one base, build a zealot. Why is that second pylon so important? Because that zealot supply caps you, so you can't build more probes otherwise. Notice how he's at 23 supply. Pylon finishes exactly as that probe pops. If that doesn't give you a little bit of moist panties, then I don't know what will, because I love it when shit lines up like that in StarCraft. That gets me so excited. That's the perfection of Stats. He's a great player. So he's going to do a Stargate response, and he does have a different opening, which is a Stargate opening. We'll see in Game 4 as well. So what's really cool is here, even a game where this is a reactive Stargate on one base, he's trying to chrono an adept to deal with this Reaper. Notice he's walled off the jumping path, so the Reaper has to take a few seconds longer to get in. And he says, you know what? Screw this bunker. I'll send a few probes to try and kill that. My Zealot has to try and chase the Reaper. And we see Maru come in. He's like, haha, baited your probes out into the open, and does take down one of these probes. What's really interesting here is I would have pulled like 6 probes and been attacking that bunker with the Zealot and the probes. But then Stats here is like, oh shit, that bunker's almost finished. Realizes he maybe has put himself under a bit more pressure than he'd like. But he blocks the Reaper from getting in with the probe pull. That probe zaps the SCV, and those units clean it up. Goes straight for a Stargate. His third pylon is late. Oh, awesome. It's not just me that gets supply blocked on this. Oh, he cancelled a probe to build it, didn't he? Did he? Because it's 3 supply for an Oracle, right? Or does he just not queue it up?
He canceled a probe. He canceled a probe.
Okay, yeah. He cancels a probe so he can start the Oracle. It's not just me that gets supply blocked with this Oracle. For me, though, the probe just popped when I tried to build the Oracle when I was trying this earlier. And I was like, no! 18-second delay on my Oracle. That's really bad. And then goes straight for the natural and then restarts probe production. So this is just really sexy, really clean. Now, wait a second, your opponent's on one base, he's gone 2 gases. What if there's tanks coming in and bunkers and libs? What if there's double reactor cyclone coming in from just outside our third? This is why this is the most beautiful thing. This blue set of waypoints here. How many times have we seen Massa try to screw with people's heads by like hiding his factory and his barracks in NA Challenger, right? You want to check the factories
the first
at
one
home.
that did that.
Of course, I should. I mean, well, I should know it was the original Maru.
Maru
I mean,
2.0 was doing it in NA.
Maru 2.0. For you guys who don't know, Massa is his actual human name is Maru. Maru Kim. So it's always kind of a little bit confusing when we talk about Maru and Maru. But yeah, he is kind of like a lesser Maru, I guess. No offense to Massa, he's pretty damn good. But I think anyone that plays StarCraft is lesser than Maru, except maybe arguably Cyril, but I think he still needs to kill a few more Koreans before we give him that title for sure. But basically, yeah, that checks that the factory is going down at home. And as soon as you see the factory at home, you're chill. You don't see that factory at home with that probe, you freak out. You just like, you don't even need a Nexus. You just like keep chrono boosting Stalkers out of that gateway, make even a Void Ray if you want. And you're going to scout around your base with like a probe, maybe the Zealot. You're going to be like, just let's, what is this idiot doing? What is this guy doing who doesn't even have any buildings in his own base? Because at that point, one base versus one base, you're way ahead. Because the moment you defend his shit, you go out and you get to kill his production on the map. And he's like floating his barracks and factory home and he's got nothing and he's infinitely behind. So against a proxy, checking for that factory follow-up, very key, allows him to say, that's cool, I just need the Zealot Adept. Notice his gateway is not producing. So he's just building oracles, he's probing, he's building his Nexus. And what's really cool about the triple Oracle style, which we've seen lately, is there's a couple of cool things. So he's going to go for a third Oracle. Number one, they kill things with lasers. We're going to see that here. Cool. Comes in, kills a few SCVs, gets out. So you can do safe pressure. Number two, they scout things. You can fly in and revelate. Now, Maru did a really good job. He's actually going Cloak Banshees this game. And Stats actually doesn't see it. And that's because those Cyclones kept zoning out the edges, but that's also why this angle was open, why I got a bit of damage. Not just that, they have stasis traps, so they can go, lol, we freeze things. Lol, 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 lol. But they also detect things as well. So the Oracle is your multi-purpose get-wrecked Terran tool, where Banshees are a big thing in the meta. They're a big way of keeping Protoss honest and saying, dude, you can't skip your robo for that long. You can't do this. And what you want to do with the Oracle style is you want to go Oracles into Blink and into Sentries. That's what Stats wants to do here. You know, he doesn't actually want to go for a fast robo with this variation of the build. But he's got almost endless detection with those Oracles. If you want, you can play it like Probe does, the Australian pro player, and make 13 stasis traps around your third base and just across the map, and your opponent better be on top of splitting their shit up. You can constantly tag. It's just very cool, the sort of level of detection this gives. Now, that Banshee's gotten out without him actually seeing it. But yeah, you can do things like this. You're like, sweet, get a Widow Mine, get a few Marines. And then he scouts in, and he sees the starport. But even then, he doesn't see the tech lab, so I don't think he knows about it. And he loses one of the high-energy Oracles. And a Banshee rocks up into his Mineral Line, and he is unprepared. However, he is more than prepared for the frontal push. Stalkers with good micro can take care of these Cyclones, absolutely. He's distracted, so the Widow Mine gets a good shot. But having no shield battery, nothing like that, ooh, that's frustrating. So he has to recall, lands the Revelation, and does thankfully not take too crazy damage, just 6 probes. But the Cyclones run back in, and he's like, oh my lord, I'm taking damage. His Oracles can't chase that down. He's got to go back for yet another Banshee here, causing him problems. He's had to build another Oracle for detection. This is the important thing. Just get a third or even a fourth Oracle if you spot Banshees. Don't react with a Robo, because the Terran has to gimp their production to go for Banshees like this and to do this sort of push. Look at the barracks timing of Maru. So for any Protoss player who experiences any sort of like Banshee plus like 1-1-1 push, and there's Cyclones and Widow Mines and Marines, and it feels so imba, go take a look at the Terran's infrastructure afterwards and remind yourself how friggin' terrible this opening is if it doesn't do massive damage. Yeah, you got the third. Yeah, you did good damage as Maru. About 6 minutes until you can push out with Bio. He's just starting his second and third barracks. It's just a really, really trashy amount of infrastructure you have as a Terran. So it definitely is powerful. It has to be respected. It can be hard to stop, but it's something where if you actually shut that down with no damage, like the game is over. It's just such a slow transition, and we're going to see that in this game. Maru's going to take a long time to add anything on here.
Can I also say that for anyone that is a little bit higher level and is curious about using Stargate as a response, or using Stargate builds and are curious about responses, if you see that they open Banshee like that, and you go into Charge Lot Phoenix, something that I saw Trap doing a lot is you can just do a big 8-gate, 3-base Charge Lot Phoenix bust, because like Pig was saying, their infrastructure is so delayed, their stim is going to be so late, and they're not going to have enough bio, that you can just do a big push with just a bunch of Charge Lot Phoenix and a War Prism with 8 gates, and you can just absolutely destroy them.
Sorry, I ran away from the computer to refill my glass of water just at the end of that. Can you summarize it for me?
If you see Banshee opening, then because like you said, their stem and stuff is so late and all that shit, you can just do a big 3-base 8-gate Charge Lot Phoenix all in. I was seeing Trap do that a lot recently. I wrote a guide on it actually too.
Of course you did.
Yeah, and actually, sick teaser. I was planning on doing a guide on Stats' build for from this series, so
nice.
Stay tuned for that. Wow.
Have you seen the Book of Filth, Gemini?
No.
So I've actually written up some notes on these builds already in the Book of Filth, even though it's not a filthy build. If you just type there's a link in chat. So basically, the Book of Filth is where I write all my cheesy builds. But lately, I've just been, when I'm first working on a macro build, I'll just write it in there and then I'll put it somewhere else where it belongs later on. So at the top of that document, basically, I just constantly update that. It's a public document filled with cheeses. You guys, if you're watching on YouTube, go to my Twitch chat. twitch.tv/x5_pig. You can type !filth at any time, even if I'm not live. It'll give you a link. It's a Google Drive document. Only I can type in it, but anyone can read it. So it's where I put all my cheesy builds, and occasionally, I think my TVP build's still in there because I couldn't get Spawning Tool to take it for some reason. I've really got to get someone else to post that for me, since Spawning Tool's been really weird for me lately. But yeah, that's really cool. So I want to. There was that question before, and I was going to say, but you went on such a good tangent about map control. I got caught up in that, and we talked about that for a few minutes. There was a question about, well, how do I get to Colossi? How do I do this? Step 1, as a Protoss player who wants to improve, go to a website called Reddit All Things Protoss. Go to a website called Team Liquid and check out Gemini's amazing guides. He does a build of the week every week on Reddit All Things Protoss. He has for friggin' ever. There's tons of good builds. There's even better write-ups of them on Team Liquid. They're still doing those, I believe.
Yeah, I do them on All Things Protoss first, and then they eventually get uploaded to TL once Wax gets around to it.
And they're beautiful write-ups. They're also in a little app where you can actually overlay these builds into the game for you as well on Overwolf. There is a Spawning Tool Build Advisor app as well. So there's actually a ton of great resources in 2018 in Legacy of the Void, thanks to people like Gemini. So the thing is, something, and just to go back on that point from earlier as well, if you're learning a build, what you'll find is there's like distinct points in the game. There's stages, I like to think, right? It's like, if Terran's just sitting on 2 command centers and he's going all in, you're not going Colossi from here. You're just making Immortals, Charge Lots, Stalkers, Sentries, and you're just going, ooh, you're just going to try and punch your opponent in the face with it, all right? But because he keeps spotting 3rd command centers, in this case he spotted it down here earlier, he's like, you're going 3 base, I can take the gases on my 3rd. I can fill this mineral line rather than just having, say, a handful of probes on my 3rd. I can go for the Colossi, and in this case, double Robo Colossi. And this is really cool. Now, my favorite part here is stats like this. I always talk about like scouting, like it's perversion. You know, you're perving, you're having a bit of a sneaky look. But I think when it's like 3 oracles are out, it's like, it's just the NSA. Like, you know, like it's like anything you do, they see, they are studying every single little activity you're doing. There are no secrets. This is not just a perv. This is like full-on invasion of privacy. Zero right to any anonymity anymore. I think I managed to get that word out. The longer the stream goes, any word above 2 syllables I tend to be unable to say, but I think I said that almost correctly. So hats off to me. Here we see the stay boy part of the build. He's like, stay boy, get all your ghosts locked down before you can EMP me. And comes in with the same brutal push that we saw earlier. Now there's a ton of Vikings out. And notice how, I was talking earlier about how this army has power spikes. Guess what? The power spike's gone. Partly because there's no zealots left in the army because they're gone. Mostly because there's enough units that kill the splash damage, and it's mostly Stalkers versus Marauders. And we see what happens there. Stats army gets taken on a one-way trip to D-Town. Dicktown, for you people who are new to the stream. It's a place you go when you lose in the StarCraft match very badly. Thankfully, by the time that happened and that power spike was over, Stats had once again used the power spike to kill 50 workers of Maru. So he is outproducing Maru by roughly double, 2.5 times the production. He also says, hey, you don't have any Ravens. You've only got limited scans. You've just dropped all your mules. Guess what? I'm going to just warp in DTs, and they're going to do insane amounts of damage to your army here. Even uses the Prism there for some fancy micro. Notice he splits the DTs up, comes in one at a time. A very clever way to hold on here, because all Stats needs to do is defend this attack, and he will win. 100%. He even goes for the Disruptor transition Gemini was talking about is another reason why Colossi are very good. Gemini mentioned that earlier. He said, you know, it's cool because Disruptors are a great unit. It's such a smooth transition. You add Disruptors to Colossi and you have the most ground-pounding army out there. For those of you who've been around the StarCraft scene a while, you might have remembered BlizzCon 2016 when Showtime brought out his every type of splash damage build, which is the first time we saw someone just go Colossi, Disruptors, and Storm and use them all flawlessly to just shit on Terran armies. And he was the only player that beat Beyond in that BlizzCon tournament when Beyond was the WCS champion. Showtime beat him in the group stage, just obliterated his army, and then practiced with him a bunch, and Beyond wrecked every Protoss player from then onwards, after they spent that whole night practicing in the practice room. And then Showtime, I think, got killed by, was it Dark or someone? I can't quite remember. But anyways, good times. So the timing was really brutal, and I want to go back and watch that fight one more time here because it is just so fascinating, the power spikes that happen. I was talking about how, you know, it's hard to push in sometimes and you're afraid to push in, but let's look at some unit counts before this fight happens, guys. So overall supply, Stats is ahead in supply. He's got 2-1 upgrades, all off a single forge. So remember, when he goes Twilight Robo Twilight, double forge. Always goes for 1-1 and then 2-2, hits a 2-2 timing. When he opens with a triple oracle, it's a slightly different build order. Let's talk you guys through that transition really quickly and then we can actually explain this point. So, step 1 is second and third gateway comes down. So you can non-stop produce oracles to 3. You squeeze in a second and third gateway. When your natural's close to saturated, you're usually going to have excess money. So you put down a third, then double gases, followed by a twilight and a forge. And you get all your upgrades off this single forge. You can put a lot of chrono boost into that periodically, drop a chrono, that'll get your upgrades still going pretty fast. And you always want to focus attack upgrades, whereas when you're going for a charge lot focused army, it's usually armor. But because you're focused on force fields, keeping your opponent at bay, longer range stalker and colossi units, your attack upgrades are more important with this style. So you go +1 attack, +1 armor, then +2 attack, then +2 armor. And that's how you do it. From here, you'll see 3 more gateways. Obviously, this game was chaotic, so it takes a long time for the transition to happen. The third has to get replaced. But we should see 3 more gateways and then a robotics go down. Let's see. Robo goes down first. In this case, makes sense. I mean, he's playing against Banshees that are being annoying as well. 3 more gateways go down and charge Immortals. Yeah. Cool. And there should be a few more gateways as well. Where the gateways at where the gateways. Goes second Robo and Robotic Support Bay when he decides he wants to go into Colossi. Actually hasn't built a single Observer, just a couple of Immortals. And Stats is always a big fan of at least getting 1 or 2 Immortals in this army. Does make a big difference against those Marauders. Absolutely. Actually, does he stay 6? Surely he adds another 2 gateways soon. Probably after the Colossi production starts. I guess he just says, look, I just don't have enough money. His economy, you know, he's a bit slower getting on the gases and stuff. He has to take this mid-game oriented fight, so he's not even focusing on the Colossi. He knows he needs to be able to roll this army right here, right now. Maru kind of backs off there as well. And then finally he says, look, I won that fight. Double Colossi and the Robotic Support Bay upgrade, the extended Thermal Lance. I'll extend your Thermal Lance. Starts up there as well. Traps Play extends Gemini's Thermal Lance, in case you guys didn't know. Gemini gets very excited. You see those, the Sky Commander come in with those oracles. To be fair, who doesn't get excited by Trap's play? Trap's a bloody good Protoss player.
People
and
who underrate him.
He did try to play Disruptors versus Impact. That was Trap, right? Was it?
Dude, that game was nuts.
Was on this map as well.
Holy moly.
That was one of the funnest maps I've seen in a while. It's like, is he actually going Disruptors? Oh, he's getting wrecked. Oh, he just killed 100 supply of Zerg without losing any army. He's back in it!
Insane. I can't even believe that game. Like, he just did nothing with the Adepts, and he's like, I guess I have to go Disruptors, otherwise I die to Roaches. And then, oh my... everyone go watch that game. It's in the greatest games, or the best games, July, or whatever, on TL.
On Team Liquid. Yeah, it was such a fun game, dude. I remember just tuning into that and I was like, what am I watching? He's playing Disruptors versus Zerg. And I was like, well, you are playing Impact, the guy who plays 57 drone Roach Hydra every game.
Yeah.
And even if he goes Lurkers, it's like very low economy Lurkers because he's Impact. And it's actually sad that I think Impact won that series 2-1, right?
I don't remember.
Can't hear Gemini.
Can the stream hear me?
The stream can. Absolutely.
Let me rejoin.
I can hear you.
Everyone else can. That's
I can hear
super
more
weird.
How about now?
There's a glitch with my Discord where it's like if I join later, I can't hear some people.
Oh, that's
Like,
weird.
his voice-
Maybe just
like
like
it.
maybe close
we
the
good
whole app
now?
and try reopening it, and we'll see.
So, Triple Helix and I can't hear him through Discord either, but I can hear him on the webpage app, and I can hear him on the stream, so it's fine.
That's insane.
Discord.
I feel bad for you guys. You can't hear
Gemini. I
that
don't know
wonderful
if I'm
Gemini
speaking loud
voice.
enough.
Holy crap! Is Clem in my chat?
Yes.
Shout out to
Yeah, somebody gave him a sub or a sub.
Ah, Shrego, thanks so much for gifting a sub to Clem. Clem, thanks for hanging out, dude. I learnt my I copied your Terran build from Austin, which I know you don't do anymore. I don't think anyway. Your 3 racks. That's it made me not hate playing Terran vs Protoss. Thank you, Clem. Gonna fanboy a little bit here.
How are we doing now with voice? I just redid in Discord.
You guys can let him know if you guys can you guys hear Gemini? He just
Yes.
rejoined and said, "Can you guys hear me?"
Yeah, I can hear him now.
All right. Well, the stream
yeah.
can hear anyway, so it should be good.
Saved.
Panda
On the Bob
Saboya.
Ross of SE2.
The Bob Ross. He's painting some beautiful, weird voice activity on Discord. Panda Saboya, thank you very much for the tier 1 sub, my friend. So, guys, this fight is what I was talking about. Maru's like, it's cool, dude. I got 70 workers. I'm making Vikings. I'm going to wreck your army. I have 5. How many? You got 3 Colossi? I only got 5 Vikings. Can you give me 30 seconds? Because I'm building them 4 at a time. If Stats was at 30, 40 seconds later, if he was a little bit further behind in this game, whereas I feel like Stats is just ahead in this game. He's finding a timing before 2-2's done, when his 2-1 is done. So he's got an upgrade advantage, whereas he'll be behind in upgrades in about 50 seconds. Or, yeah, about 50 seconds. And he's hitting just before the Vikings are there. And the Ghosts, what do the Ghosts do, guys? These 3 Ghosts that have been somewhat prioritized out of Maru, they're just not as important. They help, don't get me wrong. They help a lot against everything. But it's the Vikings that are the key. We see Widow Mines always just getting picked off. This time around, it's Mass Stasis Trap. But once again, yeah, Stat says, oh, I don't know if I can push in here. It's such a big arc. Splits his Zealots off. And this is what we talked about. Because you can kind of just sit there and say, hey, come to me. And if the Terran engages on you, you split the army with Force Field. You dick him. Zealots get this 4th. Zealots get in the natural. And he creates an insane amount of threat at the front as well. He says, fight into me. Fight into my Stasis Traps and my Force Fields. And by the way, this is the saddest part of this whole story. I remember watching this replay. I was like, the command center is going to finish. Nope. 1 second. 1 second for finishing. So the one problem here, of course, for Stats, that's what I was pointing out before. He only has 6 warp gates. He really should have made 3 or 4 more gateways rather than that Nexus, because he desperately needs Zealot warp-ins. And he's making Stalkers right now. It's also the absolute wrong unit to be warping in right at this point. Pure Stalkers versus Marine Marauder Medevac. The Vikings come in, and at that point it's like 10, 11 Vikings, and they just obliterate the Colossi, and then Marauders, of course, can take care of the rest of the army. This Stasis Trap, I mean, that probably saves him from dying to the counterattack. If those units were like hot on his tail with this many Medevacs with that much energy healing them, I don't really think Stats could have hung on. But, you know, that buys him the necessary 21 seconds he needs on half of that bio army getting across the map. He's like barely getting his units out, and he does bounce back. So what could Stats have done a little bit better there is be more conservative with that army on the front. He definitely danced with fire. I mean, you can't even say it's a wrong decision, but if he lost this game and we said, what should you have changed? It would be don't dive in so deep. Don't be such a risky psychopath of a player. And, and just kill the SCVs with the Zealot counters. And add on Storm and those sort of things. Because Storm wrecks Vikings. Obviously, you need to do the dance with the Micro versus the EMPs. But for anyone who's like, hey, EMP wrecks High Templar, there's a thing called a Warp Prism. Put your High Templar in it. Enjoy the Terran Tears. Once you get the Micro down of unloading a moving Prism, boxing the High Templar, and dropping Storms, like, ooh, you're going to have a lot of fun on the ladder. It's actually one of the main things I've been meaning to work on, because I still haven't tried it. I just watch amazing Protoss players do it and wreck games over and over again. Are you good at that, Gemini? I feel like that's
Sometimes.
a move you'd be pretty good at.
I do. I did it for a while, like originally in 4.0, but then once Disruptors became good again, I went back to my Disruptor drop builds, so I kind of lost the micro for it a little bit, and I've thrown a game here or there by accidentally not dropping the Templar.
Yeah.
But sometimes I can be pretty good at it.
Yeah, there was a really funny moment. So that game's over. Let's hop into the last replay, guys, and we'll quickly go through this one since we've been going for quite a long time. This one's going to be split into multiple videos for sure.
Maru actually threw that game pretty bad when he walked into those stasis wards.
He knew they were there as well. He
scanned them before the fight happened at all, and they just forgot about them. Yeah, if he had remembered and just split off or just gotten rid of them, he would have just completely won the game right there.
I'm going to take a guess and say losing all the Zealots killing his entire economy. He wasn't in the calmest mental state at that point. I know it was a Terran player who's had Zealots tear their shit up. Colossi just like rip away at everything. And you're like, I need to kill all these valuable Protoss units right now. This game is over. Got a bit carried away with the urgency. Thank you very much, Eddie Pancakes, for the Twitch Prime sub. My man, appreciate the support. And you mean? Oh, sorry, guy. Oh, I'm so sorry. It is GGE Mini. Apologies. I'm sorry, man. I'm accidentally teaching the community to say your name wrong. Tosis is somewhere silently wagging his finger at his monitor, just going, "Fucking pig's an idiot."
I love that Artosis keeps it up, even in the face of In Control, just being it's not that's definitely not his name, and fucking Artosis just what do you mean, man? As if he totally actually thinks that's how my fucking name is said.
Artosis has actually just the best goofy humor in the world. It's
Artosis
actually
is great, dude.
When he gets silly, especially at I Am Katowice when we do a 13-hour broadcast day for the third day in a row or something. We're all just tired and loopy, and things get really weird in the green room. But Artosis just becomes the funniest, most goofiest person, especially, and then he gets on camera as well on the desk, and he's just being so silly. There's the one person who is just always, he's consistently the silliest person I think of any broadcast. It's Dan, and he makes it so much fun. So, gotta love the Tosis. Matt 500, thank you so much for that kind gift of a sub.
Oh, wow.
GGE Mini is now a part of the pigsty. Slides into the mud head first. Starts throwing down some stasis traps, upgrading his thermal lance because he's excited to be in the mud. And we are 100% going to get him to do some mud wrestling later on. Don't worry, guys. We'll announce when that gets booked in. The GGE Mini WCS mud wrestling event that we've got planned. Thanks to Kickstarter that we did raise. What?
Hello? Can I get some information on this?
Oh no, you signed a contract ages ago. You're drunk. You don't remember. It's fine.
I've been drunk 3 times in the last year.
Same.
Lame.
When did this happen?
Well, I may have slipped something into your drink. Just a light It's a forget me now. It was a forget me now. It's yeah. I use it with people who I like, so that they stay near me. They don't run away. Anyway, long random date rape jokes aside and vague Arrested Development references to Job, my favorite character out of any show ever, for being such a sly dog. Frazmatazzle with the tier 1 sub. Much love, dude. Appreciate the support. So, let's go into this last game and talk about it, guys. The Oracles had no idea there was Banshee this time. And Maru does the genius move of flying it out the middle of the map, which, let's face it, probably works most of the time. That's why he did it. But if that didn't get tagged, this would have taken Stats to Dicktown. Now, in that previous game, what could we learn from Stats' last second spotting of the Banshee only as it entered as natural? We can learn Stats is a god, and you guys would have lost 20 probes in that scenario. Because he's Stats, what did he do? Remember? He recalled Stalkers, landed the Revelation just after cleaning up his third, sniped it down, ended up losing the third, but cleaned up the Banshee, got the next Banshee, had a Phoenix come out, intercepted along with the Oracle, and it was like, oh, okay. Gob? Oh, it's Gob. Sorry, guys. Gotta get my pronunciations right. Yeah. So he shut that down. This time around, we get to see what happens in a clean response. So when you're fighting against this, step 1, shield batteries immediately. Step 2, build a Phoenix. He often builds a Phoenix blind anyway. I think he'd started that just before he spotted the Banshee in this game. Sometimes he'll build the Phoenix blind, sometimes he doesn't. But I think it's, if you're a noob, just build a Phoenix anyway, because it helps with libs as well a lot with this style. So if you're, I say a noob, if you're, I consider anyone that's not in GSL a noob. I'm talking about myself. I build a Phoenix blind when I play this style. But yeah, basically he's just gonna do a very organized response. Shield batteries, and then he's gonna say, look, okay, I need to go hunt down that Phoenix, but I can't send all my oracles. So he splits off 1 oracle and a Phoenix onto control group. Oh, he doesn't even control group them. You god.
Actually,
Okay.
By the way, Trap does
just
blind
that good.
Phoenix as well.
Cool.
So not even only noobs can build blind Phoenix. Trap does it as well. So
Nice.
don't feel bad. You can
Well-
you can build that blind Phoenix, young
What
diamond
was
hero.
that other comment from my amazing mod? Someone was saying something?
I don't know. Apparently, it wasn't important enough.
Oh well. Thank you very much, Fuzz the Kitten, for the tier 1 sub. Appreciate it. Alright, cool. So anyway, basically splits that off. And what's really cool in this game is Stats looked at that push of Marines, a tank. I think there was a mine in here before as well. Was there? Where is that mine? Oh, yeah. Yeah, there is. I'm like, I could have sworn there was a mine. I have to change my camera angle to even see it. Okay. There's a mine under there. Bunker, SCV is a cyclone. He's like, screw that. I'm not going to take that out. And then Maru's spidey senses tingle, and he's like, fuck you. I'm not going back the way I came. Stats, like, wants him to. Actually, Stats kind of accidentally scares him away from retreating into the stasis traps, which is kind of the funny thing here. And then Maru's like, okay, screw that. I got to retreat south. But what was very cool about this one is, you know, everything was going according to plan. Stats was going to Forge and Twilight. And he was just like, oh, shit, I'm just not ready for this push, especially since I got to deal with that Phoenix at the same time. The Banshee, I mean. So he keeps splitting off and dealing with the Banshees very, very well, right? Takes the other third immediately. But he says, look, I can't let you get home. Like, that's such a good trade for you. I will be behind. And I love the way he just corners this army and says, nah. Uses the Revelation to know when the tank's siege so he doesn't have to engage it until he's completely ready. And then look at this masterpiece. Now, Maru is like, shit, I can't lose those units, and makes a terrible mistake coming out here to try to save them. He should have recalled this army. Unfortunately, he's Terran, so he can't.
I was just about to say, do you know what race he's playing?
You know, I have that muscle memory now. Whenever I get a Terran army trapped, I actually go to recall my Nexus. Because, like, whenever it's like a really hopeless scenario, you know they're going to kill, like, one unit. And you're like, I'm like, and I have this, like, moment of frustrated, like, what can I do to get some value? And I'm like, oh, I should no, you can't fucking use that spell, pig. But losing these two tanks is very, very bad. Yeah.
Terran Recall is for StarCraft 3.
Oh, yeah. Let's give Town Portal Scrolls to all the StarCraft races. No worries.
God.
No worries.
200 Zerg army just recalling back after decimating your entire base.
Oh, please.
Recall the Mutmuts. Fuck yeah. But yeah, getting those tanks was crucial in this game. And then once again, at the end of this, once everything stabilizes, it just felt like Stats was too good at shutting down these 1-1-1 builds from Maru. You know, there was game one where Maru's like, all right, we're going to do this like 3 barracks, 3 command center macro style. And Stats went like the most beautiful greedy macro game of all time. But then we look at these other games and it's like Maru's doing these crazy 1-1-1 attacks. His barracks are coming down so late. By the way, this is why I tell people to look at innovation games for planning their base. Because Maru, when a game's not going his way, has like the most ugly base layouts you'll ever see. Like he just like throws that shit down wherever, and I hate it. Innovation is like a robot. He'll have nice, neat rows almost every game, and I love seeing that. But anyway, random little OCD things aside, Maru can't push out for a very long time in this game. It takes him forever to get stim and combat shields. He actually, interestingly, goes 4 tech labs, only 1 reactor. And normally you'd go 3 tech labs, 2 reactors, but I think he's realized he's up against Colossi playing these games. Marines are pretty much worthless against them, and he just wants more Marauders. But I think the one thing I would argue is that the Raven is a big expenditure, which Stats deals with too well. Yes, if it lands Interference Matrix, it's amazing. Really hard to pull that off. Number 2, where's the Vikings? Where's the Libs? He scans there, and he's still not sure if it's Storm or Colossi. I feel like he's stuck in this older mode of playing, Maru is, where he's like, I'm going to keep building mines. I'm going to just very slowly transition. And this time, he does go for a faster fusion core, I feel. He's like, you know what? I should go for those range Libs earlier this time around. But he actually started it quite a bit after the starport on the tech lab. And this delay, once again, is crucial. It's the same delay. He says, look, the Vikings didn't work last game. They can sometimes work, but let's go range Libs. They take a bit longer to get up than the Vikings, but they've got way more well-rounded strength, whereas the Vikings only counter the Colossi, don't beat anything else. And Stats says, guess what? This time I'm going to push with 3 Colossi, a Prism, a bunch of Stalkers, 3 Sentries, 2 Immortals. Actually, I think it's only 1 Immortal this time. Only 1 Immortal. But it's almost identical push every single game. The only difference is he goes for feedback drop, which is the coolest thing ever. He doesn't pull it off, doesn't have Storm. Never does. He always just uses his High Templar for Archons to beef out this army, because he doesn't have time to go for Storm. He wants to hit this timing where his splash damage is big, and this is the crucial moment. That's 3 Liberators. That's pretty scary. If this was 4 or 5 Liberators, and if this upgrade, which is 15 seconds from finishing, was done, this would not be breakable for Stats. As it is, Stats is going to do his normal thing. Tries to feedback drop. The Raven locks down the Prism to try and stop them unloading and barely gets out of range. So Maru knew what he was up to there. And after that gets morphed in, I actually would have loved to see Maru land Interference Matrices and like jump on this army. But Force Fields, Archons, like, you can't jump on this army, and that's the big problem. And that's why I feel like the Raven was a bit of an unnecessary expenditure, even though it's nice for killing observers. This is one of the craziest blink forwards I've ever seen, but this is what Stats does in all of these games. I always look at it and I go, how the fuck do you know you can do that? That's crazy! You're insane! But guess what? Ranged libs just finished. Those libs would have pulled back and repositioned and been sieging up from further away, just like that lib does there. Stats took away that opportunity. He said, nope, you're going libs, ranged lib, it's only a matter of time till it finishes. I need to fight you right here, right now. And he just keeps edging in. He only commits when he has to get rid of Liberators or Vikings, and otherwise he's just like, no, I'm just going to outrange you. My army has more range. You attack, I'll split it with force fields. I've got my Guardian Shield, I've got my lasers, I've got more lasers, I've got more lasers. If he wanted to, he could keep tagging this army. And Stats here just tears this up, and it was just such an incredible commitment to the one timing attack. And it's very unusual, as I said earlier in this video, for Maru, a player who's the best in the world, to lose to essentially the same timing attack 3 games in a best-of-5 series. But there's a lot of details that went into making this work. There was a lot of incredible decisiveness with how he committed to this attack, and even just this juggling when it looks like Maru's about to like thrust through, and it's like, nope, none of the Colossi are gonna die. The Archons didn't die. Every unit is damaged. None are dead. I'm up 70 supply. Get wrecked. GG's. Beautiful, beautiful, incredible PvT. And remember, guys, that took it to a 3-1 scoreline, which was just incredible. So hats off to Stats there for playing some incredible games. Gemini, any thoughts? Anything you wanted to add right now?
I was gonna go on a whole tirade earlier, how I think that, or how I thought that it wasn't necessarily an identical timing attack every single game, but I think that deconstructs your entire episode, so I won't go like heavily
No,
into
go
that.
for it. I mean, it's the same convergence point. Like
I agree,
the
yeah, I
composition
agree.
of units, like how he gets there, is vastly different.
Yeah,
But it always converges into the same attack, right?
it's a similar attack, I feel, because like each time though, I feel like he's doing it off of a reaction. He's going for a convergence point that is very versatile, that can be used in different ways. But every single one was hit in a different way, right? Like one time he had certain upgrades done, other time he had more Colossus than others, or more Archons to go with it. Like it's not an identical thing where it's like he's doing exactly this timing, exactly at this upgrade, exactly at this unit count, right? It's just
It's always 3 Colossi though.
It's like a general thing, right?
Always the moment he gets 3 Colossi, he moves out. Like there is a few things that vary, like with the upgrades, but like what were his upgrades when he finished this game? Did he get the +2 attack finished yet? Let's check.
I think he was still on 1-1.
He was still on 1-1 in this game because his upgrades were a little bit later. Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit adaptive, but
I think this game is like the most like, yeah, I'm just gonna stick to this and do this. But I think the other games as well, like especially the first game, it was like he defended that giant Doom drop, right, and then he just like immediately went and counterattacked. Like
I think he would have done it anyway though, because he does it in every game at the same time.
I mean, he could have, yeah, definitely. But I'm just saying, like, I think it's less. I think it's hard to. I wouldn't really call it a timing attack. More as just like a general like. I don't know. It's hard to call it a timing attack because like he's not really abusing a timing of the Terran. I guess he's abusing a timing of like him having 3 Colossus. I guess that's a way you can describe it.
Well, every time he hits just before ranged libs or just before a critical count of Vikings gets out. And either of those things, like enough, like 5 or 6 ranged libs or a critical count of Vikings, I would argue this is exactly what the perfect definition of a timing attack is. In that you're hitting when you have a specific strength against a specific weakness or a lack of the counter to what you have, right? So even though the upgrades don't line up in this game, you know, like it's not like the exact same thing, don't get me wrong, but like this is, especially like in Heart of the Swarm and Wings, right? The early game was a lot more static with less variability, right? So you would have the exact same game timer, exact same upgrade, like the Soul Train, for example, right? Yeah, and you'd hit an identical attack. But I would argue that in the Legacy of the Void era, this is as close as you get to an identical attack at this level of the best players in the world being like repeated over and over and again in the series, where it's always 3 sentries, 3 Colossi, 1 to 2 Immortals. He adds Archon tech and it gets ready just before he gets the push going, and he starts adding in Archons and charge lots. And it's always the same sort of army, and it definitely seeks to get damage done at that time because it feels like he's not going to be able to use those units as well. Like if he just sits back, this army's kind of shit, right? Like at the very least, he needs to get a forward position. So don't get me wrong. he is being flexible, and if he didn't sense weakness, he's always got a fourth behind it. He would start probing that fourth to like 80 probes. He would add Storm. He would go Fleet Beacon. He would go Stargate. Like, he would go for all of those things, and he would just split off Zealot counters and poke in and out and look for good trades, right? But he sniffs weakness. So, like, it's kind of like he always does this move out with this style, and he looks for this. And if he thinks he can do it, he'll just commit, like, really hard to it. But I'm sure he has a built-in reaction. You'd see if you watch, like, 50 of Stats ladder games, where he's like, nope, Lib range is done. This guy's too solid. His army's going to stay in a forward position, right? It's going to rotate between these different attack angles, looking for damage, but he's like committing more to the transition behind it, and he's splitting Zealots off the counters rather than committing to the frontal push, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was just saying it's not like it's hard to call it a like a traditional sense of the word timing attack, like how you're saying it's not like the Immortal Centurions of the past or whatever, or like the 2-2 timings of PvT Wings of Liberty, like where it's literally the exact same thing every time.
Yeah,
but it feels like it feels like a
flexible-
more flexible timing attack where like it
I'm with
has
you
the
on that.
versatility to do something. And I just like the I feel like not enough people use the term convergence point, and so I think I just naturally like using that term a lot more so that I can force that onto people. But it's just such a nice convergence point, like you were saying, that allows for that flexibility.
And I think what was so cool is we see it in all the games. All 4 games, we see the same convergence point, except the one he loses where he dies before he gets there. So 3 of the 4 games, it's the same convergence point. And what was especially cool is this game, he opened Stargate. It was just a Stargate Expand Oracle. The previous game, it literally was the exact same order of structures, just he had to defend a proxy racks first. So his Stargate went down before Nexus, and his Oracles were out a bit earlier. But then it was still the exact same order from there. Like, he very quickly went back into what was the same build in the previous game, and Game 3 and Game 4. And that was very cool as well, because it's like, oh, okay. You know, this wasn't just I only go Oracles, like, if they're proxying me and the game gets scrappy, and I do this in those situations. It was like, oh, no, this is actually a macro build as well. And he just has, like, a defensive adaptation of it, which you'd imagine, he would have. But really cool to see there. So, incredible play out of Stats. Any questions from chat as we finish up here?
Someone said they don't know what a convergence point is in this context, so
okay, let's
allow
very quickly
me.
clarify. Yeah, I'll let you can clarify that. Please do, Gemini. Very quickly, though. Let's keep it short.
Yeah, super quick. So a convergence point is basically just a point that you converge to from an opening build order. So you can have a build that opens with a certain set of things, but it's eventually gearing towards a certain set. So this game that we're looking at, or these games we're looking at, it opens with Stargate, it opens with Blink, it opens with Robo, whatever. It opens with a proxy defense. Whatever that is good. You can use that to then get to the point, which is 2 Robo Colossus with double Forge upgrades. That's what you're going for every time. So that's what you're converging towards. That's a convergence point.
Hells yeah. And they're very useful because it allows you to have consistency off different openings and different. So I like to describe builds as trees, and you'll often branch off with different reactions to different things because you can't just do the same thing every game. You're going to get killed by certain things. The convergence point allows you to have, after you've branched off, a way to get back to the main trunk of the tree, get back into everything you're comfortable, you're familiar with. So hopefully that clarifies for you guys. Why is Pig a big noob? Because Hypersover drunk texts him, apparently. A little bit too much random nonsense.
Someone had a question about if you remembered any big stylistic differences between the way that Stats played versus Maru now versus in the GSL first season of this year.
Oh, Jesus. I can't remember those games too well. Gemini,
I can remember
any
some of
quick
them,
ones?
actually. And this is actually a super awesome point because it goes exactly to what we were talking about earlier and what Artosis was talking about a lot. Because Stats was trying to do a lot of early game shit and a lot of gateway style focus. So, like, this is why we're saying, or this is why Artosis was saying a lot, like, just go Colossus. Like, Mario can't out-micro Colossus. And, like, that's exactly what happened this time. Stats went for Colossus-based styles. You can't trade very well versus that. You can't do the really abusive micro style that Mario is so used to. You can't do the fast ghost stuff to take advantage of the fast Templar switch as well, or use EMPs on the main gateway army. So there was some differences in that regard. And then Stats also was doing some, like, he was trying to do like the double proxy Robo and like Darkness Sanctuary from the side of the base or whatever. He tried, like that got completely shut down. Like he just microed that terribly. So Stats didn't try any of that kind of early cutesy stuff. He just played really safe, solid reactionary, did a really good convergence point with the style that is not as common anymore.
So Varen has a good question. Great answer, by the way, Gemini. He says, when are you safe to go for Colossi as opposed to staying on gateway units to defend Terran pushes? So good to have Varen staying up super late for this show. Varen, of course, is a Master 1 player. He's been GM a few times as well in the past from Germany, Protoss player. So I was very excited to hear, you know, to look at stats play. So thanks for hanging out and asking some questions, mate. I think we mentioned it earlier, but basically it just comes down to you need to see them go for a third. As soon as Terran's going for a third base, you can basically go for Colossi at your pre-apportioned timing. There may be a moment where you say, oh, I mean, that's a pretty slow third command center. He's still got this big 3 barracks. Like, he's just started his third CC. My third Nexus has already been saturated for a while. Like, maybe I need to delay it a little bit if I'm a little behind because maybe I took some harassment damage. I didn't clean up the Banshee as well. So there's, like, always a bit of flexibility. But in like game 1, we saw it was a very static build from Maru, where stats was like, oh, super fast third CC and 3 barracks. You've got no factory, no starport yet. And he was just immediately into Colossi with his double forge. With the Stargate opening, you're usually going to be, you know, a little bit more potentially delayed into the Colossi because obviously you got those oracles out. But with both styles, it's either lots of observers or lots of oracles seeing everything. And there's always going to be a bit of flexibility, but as a general rule, I would say if you see Terran committing heavily to a third base, you can go for the Colossi. If they're committing to a big 2-base push, just Zealots, Stalkers, Sentries, and Immortals will get the job done. Just get your gateway
Or you could
count
actually
up
go
faster.
into fast disruptors again versus or against those heavy
The 2-base push.
stuff.
If you've gone for the fast support bay, but if you're doing one of these builds where like Stats is going like double forge, he like on Dreamcatcher we saw it was like a 2-base push and he was like, ooh, cut the Colossi out, we still want double upgrades. So if you're gonna go for like Colossi or Disruptor still, because you can do Colossi versus 2-base, it would be like a faster Disruptor or Colossi going straight up to that tech and less upgrades, and you might be like, oh, he's on 2-base, I'm not going to get any upgrades until like I defend the first wave of the push, because you're investing so much in tech.
I think I was also saying it more as if you were going for a Stargate opener, like you do Stargate, single forge with like the extra third base, and then you get a second forge later, and then after you defend like a wave or 2, then you'll end up getting like your Robo Bay as well, and you can just go into go into Disruptors instead if you don't feel like you have the time.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting all the different things you can do with that. But yeah, definitely it's somewhat stylistic how you deal with all these things, and sometimes Disruptors are so good at holding 2-base pushes. So very cool. Question for Gemini to finish up here, Boya, and then we are gonna head off because we've really got to close this one out. So I don't have too much drawn out content, though. I think this has been an amazing kind of special stream. Thank you, Gemini, for coming on. Thank you, all the mods who've hopped in. If you guys do have any really good questions, shout them out after this one real quick. Boya says, question Gemini, you love using Disruptor drops to the fast Prism, I guess. That's an awesome style. How do you follow up your initial drops? Do you push with it at Gateway Army, or do you prefer to play defensive after Disruptor drops?
So it depends on what I scout, but most of the time it's playing defensive because I'm using the drop initially as scouting and as map presence and as something to constantly chip away at the Terrans, like whatever bioforce they have. Like especially if they go 3 racks, Disruptor drop is hard counter to 3 racks because you can consistently get shots off on their main bio army because they're going to be keeping it together in that little clump. And then it's at that point I'm playing more defensive because they're going to be either continuing that with more 2-base stim bio, or they'll have medevac drops or whatever. If they are doing certain builds where it's really like 2-1-1, for example, if they go for really fast early aggression, or just something like the Cyclone Hellion not drops, but the Cyclone Hellion pushes or whatever. Anything that attacks early and suicides a lot of units into you that you can trade efficiently versus is when I will then go on the aggressive with it instead. So I'll use the drop to like zone out stuff, or I will if it was like even earlier, like for 2-on-1 for instance, you can use the drop to follow their drop and then try to pick off units as they drop. But if it's earlier than that, then I just kind of can defend or whatever. And then afterwards, I'll go on the aggressive a little bit more and do some more aggressive warpins to either delay their third or just go and straight kill them if I feel like I have the opportunity to.
Hells yeah, man. I think that's a really great way to balance all of that out. Very quick question. Someone was saying, does one of the styles stand out, Robo or Stargate? Nope. I think they both look great, Farron. I think it really comes down to what you're best at, you know. I can't say one of these styles is better than the other. I think as metas shift, people will get stronger. As a general rule, I think the style that's more out of the meta is better. So right now, I feel like Stargate's so common in PvT. That's why I really like the Robo Twilight, especially as a way to open the series, and he denied information very well. I think that was a really good way to do it. Just because I feel in general, people are best against whatever's most common, because they have the most current practice against it. Play the thing that's out of the meta. It's gonna kick some ass. One last question. When do you go double forge or single forge? Single forge if you've opened Stargate, double forge if you've opened up Robo Twilight. From the start of today's VOD was Robo Twilight, and as we went further in the games, it was the Stargate opening. All right. So Jedi Mindkiller says, what do you think would have happened if instead of pulling back after killing the third, Maru pushed into stats second and first base? It would have probably worked out maybe slightly better for him, Jedi Mindkill, since he didn't end up getting the units home. Because he would have at least kept those 2 extra tanks alive, which would have helped him defend that third base at the end from that push. I think that would have made a big difference. And he probably just would have traded before there was a few more Stalkers warped in. He still would have been a pretty shitty trade, don't get me wrong, which is why he tried to get the units home. And that's why, I mean, if he got the units home, it would have been the right call. Stats didn't let him get the units home, so hats off to Stats for just playing that very well and cutting off the retreat. So yeah, really, really good shit from him. Any questions from you guys in the Discord? They don't have to be from chat. Mods, anyone got anything? I know I've been ignoring you since I've been enjoying conversating with Gemini and hearing his beautiful Protoss thoughts.
Baron asked before, what's the benefit of going 3 oracles over 2 oracles?
Detection.
Yeah.
Why 3 oracles over 2? Detection. Because you're not going for a robo very fast when you open Stargate. So if you don't go 3 oracles, you can get totally screwed. He often really needs those oracles to help tag, especially because he's tagging the opponent's army for scouting. If he's tagging and then suddenly there's a Banshee, also is using them to help defend. They're helping a lot in those fights. They're picking off reinforcements on that Catalyst game. He got a Widowmine and a few Marines. He's engaging on Cyclones with them. And not just that, I know this is a move Trap likes to do, or at least I've seen him do it before, and I'm sure Gemini's a big fan of it. You can do some very cool aggression where there's actually a bust you can do where you just bust with like 8 or 9 Stalkers and your Oracles dive in and kill the Siege tank, defending the Terran wall, and then you shift click on any repairing SCVs or Marines in the open. And the 3 Oracles can actually kill a Siege tank very quickly. Another one you can do, which Terrans are so paranoid about, I don't think they're letting happen at the moment at the highest level, those 3 Oracles can kill Stim. If you find an exposed tech lab and you dive in, you kill that so quickly with 3 Oracles, and the Terran just tears their hair out, because it's just like chopping. I was gonna make a basically, you turn the Terran into a eunuch. All right, you're like, look, you have to guard the princess. We don't want you to have any naughty thoughts getting on those stims, so we're gonna just take away your manhood. Yeah, snip the stem away from the Terran, and they're not gonna have a good time.
Commit to that.
I remember a game on Abyssal where somebody went like 8 or 9 oracles and just kept killing off the tech labs.
Oh yeah. That was a really gross game where that happened. It just got out of control, and it was like the memeiest, disgusting shit. Where it was like, well, this is not a standard thing, but if you get ahead, oracles are a pretty disgusting way to finish a game. They just keep diving in, and their mobility is really good at finding a way in. So that's awesome. So some very cool games there. Some great questions. Thank you everyone for taking part in this. Gemini, thank you. If you can post a Twitter link in chat as well, guys, you can follow Gemini at GGE Mini, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It's just Gemini SC2 on Twitter and
it's
stuff?
GGemini19.
Okay, GGemini19, and your Twitch TV is just Gemini SC2.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Give Gemini a follow. And much love for hanging out, guys. Appreciate all of you chilling with me. Hopefully you learned a lot. We'll be doing more of these shows later this week and next week. Next up will probably be Innovations Terran vs. Zerg vs. Rogue, since there were some very cool games in there. We haven't looked at one fully from the Terran perspective. We also, of course, want to do some Zerg vs. Protoss. Stat side, Serral side in the grand finals, looking at some of those amazing things. So thank you very much for hanging out. We'll catch you guys next time.
See ya.
Peace.